South African households are truly feeling the pinch. We have the latest data from the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group, which is showing a worrying trend in food prices. You have the household food basket. It's a measure of basic groceries, which has seen a significant increase in just 1 month, reaching a new high. The group also tracks prices from supermarkets and butcheries around the country and says it adds a lot more pressure on already struggling families. And we'll talk about what this means for consumers and the broader economy with Program Coordinator Mervyn in just a moment. But let us start with some of the numbers that they have been sharing with us based on the research that they have done. And if you look at this, the cost of the average food basket, and I can almost imagine those of you who are able to actually watch our program, we know that it's a paid-for service, will look at this and resonate or know people in our communities or in our extended families who are experiencing this reality. Look at the stock cubes, which a lot of families use to fortify their meals. The price differential between August last year and August this year of around 5 Rand or so. Soup also going up. The price of tea bags going up. Think about white bread and brown bread, staples in many families. Those also exponentially going up. And the subtotal of all of these core foods, which is what these descriptions form part of, also going up. Let's move on to our next slide. All right, which is cooking oil, salt, potatoes, onions, frozen chicken pieces and curry powder, which is a condiment that a lot of people use in their foods as well. You see cooking oil going up quite a bit. There have been fluctuations in the price of oil over time, but still very high and unaffordable. Salt as well, going down slightly there, so that's a bit of a reprieve. Potatoes too going down. We see the price of onions also going down marginally. The price of frozen chicken, though, going up. So that's just a sense of overall what certain food items are looking like in our basket. And then you've got maize meal. Look at the big jump there in a 30-kilogram pack of maize meal. Rice as well, rice going down there, fortunately. I think cake flour as well going down marginally. You have the price of sugar, though, going up, sugar beans going down, and then the price of SAMP. Look at the jump in the price of SAMP. So I want to talk about those with Mervyn. Let's bring you into the conversation now, Mervyn. And I think that what's important to note is while you see decreases in certain areas, you're seeing massive jumps in what we would consider staple foods in South Africa. Some would say, you know, what's a rand or two here and there? But to the demographics that you're polling and the people that you work with on a daily basis, a rand, 50 cents, all of these carry a great deal of weight when you're near the poverty line. Tell us more.
Yes, Iman, good morning and good morning to all your viewers. The background to all this information, of course, is the fact that more than about 14 million South Africans live below the food poverty line, and something like about 30 million South Africans, which is more than half the population, live below the upper bound poverty line. So we have a country in which the overall majority of people are living in abject poverty. And then when you look at these food prices increasing, even though, Aman, we also need to acknowledge that there is a stabilizing, when you look at the overall cost of the basket, there is a stabilizing inflationary impact, largely driven by, as you've said, potato prices coming down, onion prices, or fresh vegetable prices coming down. But even in that context of stabilizing food prices, we are seeing that the cost of living continue to become dire. One example would be, for instance, that the overall cost of our basket at 5,380 is much more than a national minimum wage would have brought in. That would have brought in something like 4,836 Rand. So that already paints a picture in the midst of poverty. And then secondly, when we look, for instance, at the recent increase in electricity prices, then we see that even though the basket had dropped by 60 odd Rand, the overall cost Electricity has increased by about 138 rand. So we are still poorer than we were 2 months ago. And that is driving this deepening sense of household food insecurity and poverty in South Africa.
Yeah, there's a really interesting slide I'll bring up in just a moment, Mervyn, not quite yet, because I also just want to reflect on the fact that when you talk about people who are living in the upper bound or near the upper bound poverty line, we also think about women being the majority in terms of the gender split in South Africa, the gender demographic split, who are experiencing higher poverty levels than what we define as their male counterparts in South African society. So that's also concerning because a lot of women are raising their children, raising their families by themselves. But I want to go to this slide, which I think is so important for us to discuss next, Mervyn, and it really talks to the household sizes. Now, the cost of a food basket year on year between August 24 and August 25, the household size with 4 members, this is how much it's going to cost you with the bare minimum. And as Mervyn is saying, we're not even thinking about things like electricity and water and transport, which takes up so much of our liquidity amongst South Africa's work and labour force. 3,699 rand 35 cents for a household with 4 members. 5 members, again, affording the bare minimum in terms of groceries, 4,674 rand 97. And then if you have 7 members, that is going up to 6,460 rand 93. Mervyn, those are massive amounts when you think of minimum wage and those who might be earning minimum wage. We know in our country a lot of people even earn below minimum wage depending on where they work and how job insecure they are. Factors like transport costs, electricity, water, not even factored into there. When we think about, even South Africans having access to double-digit salaries, which is a unicorn for many South Africans, we realize that even if you earn 10,000 rand in South Africa at the lower level, you're still not going to be able to come out and have a good quality of living.
Exactly, Iman. And this is a big economic issue. So we would like to phrase this as not only an issue around fluctuating food prices, but rather, because that's always going to happen, that is a global phenomenon, and it's an economic kind of food phenomenon globally. But it is for us in South Africa a broader economic issue. Because the households, and in fact, the people that we are talking about have very stable kind of household budgets. They don't have savings that they can dip into. And so whenever prices increase, whether it be food prices or electricity prices, and as you've mentioned, women are raising families, and so electricity is not just about cooking. Electricity is also about security for women in particular. So its impact on the household means that some costs has to be paid, and then food is bought last. And when food is bought last, that means we are eating lower levels of nutrition, and we are eating cheaper food, or we are going without food, or with one meal a day. And that has major economic and socioeconomic implications for South Africa in the future. I mean, we must forget about growing GDP rates to 5, 6, 7% if we cannot feed our children properly.
And that's part of the story as we sort of wade through the data, Mervyn, that gets lost, is the intergenerational impact of malnourishment. The stunting problem, I think 1 in 4 children in South Africa severely malnourished or stunted. That affects their long-term prospects of being viable and consistent economic players. It ruins their futures as well. And just to go back, because I think these numbers, in terms of updating them, are important to reflect, Mervyn. We often say, anecdotally, half of South Africans spend their money on transport. That number is higher, actually, in terms of the report that you've just released. Electricity and transport taking up 59.2% of a worker's wage. So you think, how on earth then are you even going to be able to afford food if all you're paying for is having a little bit of electricity and being able to get to a job, right?
Exactly. And those are actually driven by administrative prices. So these are driven, for instance, by Eskom. It is driven by how the petrol price is constituted. So a large part of that is within government's control, and can be restructured into a level that provides greater affordability or greater ability of households to purchase essentials like food.
Wait, Mervyn, I want to stop you there because before I go, I want to ask you, like, what does that picture look like? I mean, we know there's SASSA, we know there are grants, and government will say these are our interventions to cushion the most exposed. But when you talk about what you're saying now, how do we do that? Because, you know, some foods are zero rated in terms of VAT and so on. So government will say, we are doing some of the things you're saying. But make it more real for us, Mervyn.
Yes, so government says, well, we've zero rated, 20 odd foods, 22 of the foods in our basket are zero rated. But there is no, because a food is zero rated does not mean that it is cheaper. It does not mean that it is affordable. So, for instance, maize meal is zero rated, and yet it has increased by 9% over the past year, making it almost unaffordable to most people. Bread are zero rated, and yet the price continues to increase. So when people go into the store, they don't ask, is a food zero rated or not? They ask, do I have enough money in my pocket in order to purchase that food? And therein lies the problem of affordability and the affordability crisis in South Africa. We do not have enough money in order to purchase the essentials that we require.
Mervyn Abrams, it's a conversation we must pick up with our policymakers as well about how to truly insulate staple items for the countries most exposed in terms of food security. Appreciate your time and sharing the numbers with us. It is part of our poll today, by the way. We're asking you, our viewer, due to rising food prices, have you adjusted your grocery shopping in the year? And I don't know if Mervyn's gone or not, but I wanted to ask him whether what have you cut out of your food basket, Mervyn, very quickly? Because we've asked this of our viewers. They say, and the choices were fewer luxuries, or they're switching to budget brands, or buying smaller quantities, or they have the same grocery list if they're lucky. What have you given up, Mervyn?
No, we definitely have cut out red meat. I mean, the price of beef is just unaffordable to my household anyway. So we eat red meat perhaps once a week. In the past, we used to eat it